it's been my indicator spot for like 10 years because it produces before all other spots, and it's in the hardwoods, and it's in this kettle, and it's in this bowl, and the one half is south facing. It has oaks, it has elms, and it's got dead apple trees too. And that spot always produces a week or two before everyone else, and that's the spot where people call me liars when I pick 10 pounds out of there, and they're like, "You went out of state and picked them out of there." It's not even May 5th. I remember it was on May 2nd when I did it. And that spot, when I go to that spot, then I know like the other spots in different counties that are southeast facing. Then I know I can go hit those spots. Because you can damage the stuff too if you're walking in there. If you have the right timing, it's always good, especially if you're on public land, because the more you go to a spot, the more someone's going to spot you. There's people just driving around looking for you. But if you, like I say, that indicator spot, the temperature, the direction of the tree. Right now, all the southeast facing spots are done for. The spot that I'm taking you today is basically almost all north facing, and I'm surprised that there's morels growing around it already. So hopefully we go in there and they grew some, but it's been such a weird year. It's been cold. 50 degrees at night and above, between 50 and 60 at night, and that's perfect morelling. Anything lower, they don't grow. Anything above, they shrivel up and they're done.
Gotta have a stretch of days like that though, right? One day can't make all the difference.
No, one day cannot make all the difference, but it can, if 1 or 2 days can be a huge difference if they started and then the moisture picked up and the heat picked up, and it can turn your morels into that in 2 days, But if you want to start them, it's got to be a good week. Like right now, everything started, and if the frost didn't get to them, if they get 2 nice warm days and we had some moisture in the morning, the morels can grow a lot. Mm-hmm. But it can be 70 during the day and they're growing, but if it's 40 at night, they're only growing half the time. So you go in there and you go to a spot and you're like, oh my God, these morels are not growing whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And it's just because it's cold at night, even though it was 75 during the day. But here in Wisconsin, it can drop to 30 at night, and that's just bad for the morels. And you got to find the right, I think there's 2 different types of elms here in Wisconsin. Chinese and American elm. And I'd be lying if I told you which one is which, but I look at the bark structure. One has a rigid structure and one has a smoother. And that's how I know. And that's the ones I go for. Smooth bark, yep. And I know people say they get them around both. I'm not saying they don't, but for me, it's, I honestly, I don't think I've ever really found them around. I've had groves of dead elms like that with the thicker bark, and I don't know. I just never seem to have any luck around them. Search for that mama tree in the wintertime. That's what I do. Find my morels in the wintertime. Everybody says I'm full of shit. I'm like, fine, call me a liar, but I'm serious. I find my morels in the wintertime because I find the tree. When all the leaves are on it, it's hard to find the dead tree right now. You're going to walk around and trying to find that dead tree, you could walk right by it in the kettles or in the woods because everything's so, the leaves are so green.
What's the perfect tree again?
The perfect tree is an elm tree that is dead and has its bark on it. And there's elm trees that look dead but are budding, and you can get fooled by them like in the wintertime. Like you can, this is a perfect tree. You GPS it, you go back there, and it's like, oh shit, it's budding. But that tree is going to die in a couple years, so you keep that in mind. And you go back there, and that tree is going to die. Because there's the Dutch elm disease is all over. So that's the deal. And it don't have to be a big tree. It can be a tree this big. And it can be that perfect bark, and it can produce 2 or 3 pounds. And you could have an area of those, like 3 or 4 of them, within 20 yards or 50 yards of each other, and that's when you end up getting, a couple hundred morels, or like a 5-pound, 10-pound load, But if you're looking at the ground, you're wasting your time. You got to look up. So I always tell my buddies, if you're wasting your time looking at the ground. Once you get to the area, then you look at the ground. But until then, you might as well just look up and find the right tree. And Hannah and Lauren know that by now.
Yeah.
They're so funny. They have picked so many morels. I've done that too. Like today, I took her out of school for turkey hunting, and then a couple of years ago, I found this huge patch, and we had soccer practice. And I went and took the girls early out of school at like noon because it was such a hike. Maybe it wasn't noon, maybe 1 o'clock or whatever. And Kim says, my wife says, what did you say? Doctor's appointment? Whatever. I said, no, I just signed them out. Morel hunting. Freaking funny.